Welcome back. Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And in studios is someone that part of the journey does align with myself and many others. See, hip hop has been a launch pad for many different people in a lot of different things. So be careful who you challenge to an MC battle because you just never know. It could be your professor, it could be your teacher, it could be the person that's doing landscaping companies, and who knows. But in studio is a sister that has taken so much in creativity from hip hop and moved it in so many different ways. So you may know her from twisting up a lot of locks and connecting with the natural hair movement. You may know her from the spoken word community. You also may definitely know her from the work that she's done empowering so many women when it comes to what they're facing from a society that definitely puts women in harm in so many different ways, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. But if you go back hip hop, know her as Nikki D. Kalimah, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
All is well. All is well.
It's good to see you, Khary.
Definitely. It's been a minute.
It's been a whole minute. Too long. I got to be around you more. I need your energy. I need your space. I need your memory. I need your historical love for hip hop. I need that in my life.
Oh man. Oh man, we're gonna have to find the real Sergio Tashini. I'm just messing. Exactly.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So part of this definitely arose a couple years back. Myself and Sterling Toll, shout out Sterling, did a project where we partnered with the University of Michigan about, they said, hey, we want to do something for our Detroit class about hip hop. And I was like, we going to tell the Detroit hip hop story. So you can't tell a Detroit hip hop story without Nikki D. You know what I'm saying? It's like you just can't go there. And the interview that we held with you, it was so rich with so much information. And I thought that we were only going to get like maybe 10 minutes because you were running like to 2 or 3 places already. But you started sharing and we picked up so much about World One and your journey there and so much more. With all of that being said, I was like, man, your life is in so many different acts and continuing on.
Ashe.
So, as I gave in the introduction, a piece of this, and also wonderful storyteller. Let's see how skilled I can be behind this microphone to pull out some of those stories and get to as much as I can.
Yes, sir. Let's go.
We're starting with the classic. Yo, people, how many generations deep to the D is your family?
My real family?
Your blood family.
Okay. All right. So my family came to Detroit in the 1930s.
Okay.
And it was my grandmother who ended up marrying a man who came up here from Atlanta. And then she had 2 aunts that followed her here. So I traced my family all the way back to a plantation in Kentucky. My family were enslaved at the John W. Bradley Plantation, and it was a tobacco farm.
Okay.
And what happened was the story, and I got like all the back up to it. I actually did the research into genealogy place down at the library in Detroit and discovered that my great-great-great-great-grandmother married her husband, and she was still a slave, and she was like 13 or 14. And there was a man named Zachary Strauss. He did the marriage, and she ended up having 3 children by her husband. And 2 of those children was Joseph Bradley. And Joseph, well, their last names at that time was Anderson, but the Bradley Plantation owed them. I don't know what that story is about with the names. But anyway, Joseph ended up marrying 3 different women, and the last woman he married was where my family came from. And our family actually migrated from Kentucky through the Nicodemus migration in Kansas. And then somehow from Kansas is where everybody kind of came to Detroit. And my grandmother, Alberta, married Ned, and they had my mother. And my mother, had me and my 2 sisters. They grew up in Paradise Valley, Black Bottom. That's where my mother was. And then when they built 75, and destroyed the whole Black Bottom area, my mother got a government subsidiary. And for the rest of her life, no matter where she rented, she would always get a discount because she was displaced as a child. So my mother moved us on the North End.
Whereabouts?
Goodwin in Westminster.
Hmm.
Did you know I grew up on the North End? All day. And then her sister moved to Highland Park. So we was between North End, Highland Park, and then my sister's father lived in Boston Edison on Lawrence.
So kind of that whole Woodward footprint, you was eating a lot of Arknarn tunes as a kid. I'm just messing.
I was, though. I just asked somebody about Arknarn tunes yesterday because I was at my aunt's house who grew up on Lawrence, and I was like, y'all remember Arknarn tunes? And they kind of looked at me, but they older than me. But yeah Arknarn tunes was the jam. But guess who introduced me to Arknarn tunes?
Was it P Groove?
Nope.
I have no idea.
Come on, talk to me.
Because when I found out P Groove, that was his people, I was just assuming it was his people. So if not P Groove, I'm gonna just roll the dice.
You gotta roll the dice. You want a hint?
Is it?
Think of old hip hop. Think of all of us who were rapping back then.
Was it Awesome Dre?
Yes.
That was just a guess.
You did good.
Shout out Awesome Dre, another person that need to get in here.
It was Awesome Dre told me, because Awesome Dre was always trying to get us to eat healthy at the studio, at backstage concerts, wherever we were. I remember this one story about Dre and I. We both recorded on Puritan at Sound Suite together. And we had different, producers, different activities, but we would end up together on certain days, usually on Sundays because it was cheaper to get the studio on Sunday.
There you go.
And you already know. So I remember this was when I was with World One Records. But by that time, I had already known about Arknarn tunes. By that time, his mom had her spot on 7 Mile. So I knew how he was cut. And he had some food delivered, or he picked it up, or somebody brought it to the studio, and they put it on side A and not side B. He was recording on side B. We was recording that day on side A. And I remember him tearing up the whole studio looking for that food.
Hilarious.
Because he knew he couldn't eat, he wasn't going to eat anything else. And I was like, he's serious about that body. He's not playing. And I was just always impressed with that. But he would never hesitate to talk to us about healthy eating and about eating from the earth and stuff like that. He was always like that.
Dre, another person during that, another one of those interviews that I thought would have been a minute that went for forever. So he's coming too. So now North End, in that whole neighborhood, that footprint, what do you remember about the community growing up as you were coming up? And what was your mom and dad? What were they doing?
Yeah, so good question. My dad was not in my life. Although my mother was married to him, they divorced when I was 3. Never saw him again. But one of the things that he did was he gave me my name. Like, I got my name Kalimah in 1968 when I was born. And my 2 other sisters, they have different fathers, but they got good Catholic names, which is nothing wrong with that. I love their names, but clearly I was being born right after the riots. It was a lot going on. And my mother was very Afrocentric at the time, too. And so it just kind of poured into me that way. And then my father was a practicing Muslim. And before he moved out, I guess, he painted this moon and crescent in the basement of our projects. We stayed in the projects. But it was a 2-level project, and it was very small. It wasn't like the bigger projects. It was like right across the street from Nate's Party Store and across the street from Super Save. And there was a sand lot with some like monkey bars and swings and stuff like that. But you could tell it was city. It was because we were right there. There's just them trying to give us recreation. But of course, if you wanted to go big time, you go to the Casa Dine, or if you wanted to go big time, you would go to the Bradley Center around the corner. But right there, where my project was, where we stayed, was right there. But my mother would always say, when I had moments, go downstairs and just look at that crescent and moon and just think and just pray. That's what she would always tell me. And I would do that, and So my mom was a single mom. My mom actually also suffered from schizophrenia,
Mm.
but she was extremely bright and intelligent. And she was smart enough to raise 3 girls on her own on the North End where a lot was going on. By the time we moved from the North End, I was 12, and we moved to the West Side. But I had learned a lot leading up to being 12. That's when the Young Boys Incorporated started. There was 2 young men that would stay at the sand lot, the park, the playground all day long, right before we moved, and I kinda got a chance to sit with them and talk to them. And back then, I was interested in writing poetry and love letters. That was my jam. And my mother actually would say, because like you talked about earlier, I know who I am. I could talk, right? And I've been talking like this since I've been young. But in my household, my mother encouraged it. And so she could tell if I was gonna be a talky chatty, kid early in the morning. And I remember she would always say, baby, you got a way of saying things. Sometimes you say the wrong things at the wrong time, but I really want to hear what you have to say. So we got a lot of errands to run today. I'm gonna give you a notepad and a pen, paper, pencil, write it down.
Mhm. So with that, at that time, I'm guessing if you're talking YBI, also up the streets, the Chambers Brothers start too.
Oh, absolutely.
So this is the North End, uh, another one of those historic communities,
Yeah, the
but
Charlestons. Well, we can talk about all of the families.
there definitely street culture is alive and running concurrent with street culture. As you talk about that neighborhood, I think of my godmother in the North End. Rest in peace, Dolores Bennett, and all of the work she was doing with young people and people that are in that community.
Yeah.
And it's a very known, rich community with families that usually have histories that run deep. You move further west. Where do you guys move?
We moved to Marlow and Puritan,
Mm.
which was really sweet because I literally could walk to Sound Suite from my
I was going
house.
to say, you're like right down the street from the studio now.
Yeah, I could walk. And am I saying Sound? Is that the right name of the studio? Because I'm getting up in age. It was Sound Suite, right?
I believe so, but
Yeah.
I just know it as World One Studio. But a lot of other things were recorded there too.
So World One Studio was on 6 Mile, and that was where we pre-recorded. But then when we went to the bigger studio on Puritan, that's when we would actually lay the stuff down and actually lead there with the reels. Like,
Okay.
that was kinda what we did. And, I'm saying Sound Sweet, I'm sure that's what it was. If it's not, y'all let us know, but it was right around the corner from my house. And so when I was recording my album for World One, if they heard a crack in my voice or something wasn't right, they would come pluck me out my bed. They didn't care what time it was. If they was in
Wow.
there mixing down, and my mother let them because I was with World One was the safest place I could have been as a woman, as a Black girl in the city with those Black men. They took good care of me. When I tell you they took good care of me, I promise you they did. And I'm talking about Butch, I'm talking about Gene, and I'm talking about my dad, John Maxey.
So let me frame World One for people that don't know it.
Sure.
So as hip hop, so I got to frame hip hop a little bit different too. So hip hop in the 50th year anniversary, and people can debate when it starts or wherever, but let's put hip hop as music begins really taking off sometime in the 70s. Let's just say that, right? So the 70s is taking off. By the time the 80s gets here, different places across the nation have their own starts of where hip hop would be. And due to the different places will have their own feel, their own approach to it. World One, as you talk about with Gene, John, and Butch, my OG Butch, their approach is going to be so much based in the music industry because so much of the music industry was in Detroit. So as I guess, and this is no offense to like some of the other places that are starting with hip hop, like in, I don't know, let's say like Texas or let's say even, other places outside of New York. They didn't have the available studios, people that knew things in the industry, the approach to it, a place where you could press wax because this is still a time when records are still being pressed. World One was a label that was independently moving a lot of records of hip hop at a time when people were still questioning whether hip hop was something that could sell or not. So it would be nothing to walk into a record store in the city of Detroit and World One Records would be selling just as much as a LL Cool J or a Run DMC. And I'm not saying this like to hype up Detroit. I'm saying this because that was what was happening at the time.
I'm so glad you brought that up, and I know we could kick it forever, but I wanna stay right there around World One Records and their musicianship, right?
Mhm.
When I got to World One, I had already opened up for major acts. I had already had a 12-inch out. I had already, like, performed. I had already tried to sell my own records. I had already received my cease and desist letter of using the name Nikki D.
Mhm.
I had already received all of that. Matter of fact, I was at the very end where I had said out loud to my crew, "I'm done. I'm about to go to college. I suggest y'all do the same thing." But then World One approached me and I said, "Okay, y'all, Imma sign this contract with World One, and if this don't do it, I'm done." I made that promise to everybody, my whole family. And when I got with World One, and the reason why I call Mr. Maxey my dad is because he literally I was like 19, 20, he literally said to me, "You ain't got no daddy." I said, "I know." And he was doing all the things, making sure I was good, safe, ready to record, picking me up from school, picking me up from work, picking me up, dropping me off, making sure I go to CVS to get the stuff I needed as a woman, all that. He was doing all that for me. And one day he just broke out and said, "You know what? We need to fill that void for each other. Imma ask you right now, will you please be my daughter?"
Mm.
And he never let me go. And he went and talked to my mom about it. She agreed. And, one thing I would say about World One, and it's one thing about Mr. Maxey and to, like Teferi Chaos, all of them, they'll tell you that I really was his favorite. And my record never came out, and I was still his favorite, and I think one of the reasons why he, like, stuck to me like that was because I came in the door negotiating. I negotiated more points for my royalties than Chaos and Maestro, than Dice. If my record had came out, I would've been getting more recording points than and more royalty points than all of them because I negotiated that.
Mhm.
And that impressed him. And I think that's why he wanted to stick around with me so much, and he didn't let me go, and I actually was with him when he took his last breath.
Mm.
A lot of people don't know that, but
That's deep.
yeah, and then one thing I wanna say about musicianship and back to World One, we got Carl Bush Small, who used to play percussions for all the big greats in Motown, and I told him, okay, Butch, I wanna do a reggae song." He went and got a reggae band. I said, "Okay, I wanna have background singers." He went and got Donna Sadler. Like, he gave me musicianship,
Mm.
and he will tell you to this day, I had a great album. It was just timing because we
Yeah.
finished the album.
Mm. Yeah, Butch, one of my OGs, he's been in here. He'll be coming back. Lord knows when. I need to get Los in here again too. With
Yeah.
that being said,
You need to get us all in here at the same time. You should
that
do
would
a whole
be
World One
that would be
reunion.
phenomenal.
Jason, all of us.
That would
I'm
be
calling them
phenomenal.
out right now.
That would be
Dice, all of
phenomenal.
us. Hey, oh, another thing people don't know, I did all the female vocal backgrounds for Dice's album.
I did not know that.
I did all of them. Me and two of my girlfriends from
Mm.
school.
Ain't that something?
Yeah, we
So
did all the whole 40 Made Me Do It. That was me and two of my girlfriends from college,
so
Tracy and Janice.
I also you laid this out, and I gotta uplift this. At the same time, as I say, World One was what you consider Def Jam, but here, and really not just here, really for the region. And Def Jam had a Nikki D. And that's where the cease and desist, because you said that, and I just want people to understand that you were the original Nikki D,
Original.
and back to contracts, and hence the learning the industry. Yeah, you get one of those cease and desist, you'll start learning a whole lot about business.
And I pushed it like, look, right? So before the cease and desist,
Hmm.
I opened up for Vanessa Sinquest. Vanessa Sinquest told me in the hotel room after we did our show together downtown. They said, "There's a girl with your same name in New York, but she can't rap as good as you. Keep it." But we kids. We ain't lawyers. We don't know what
No.
we're talking about. But they said, "No, keep your name. Keep your name," talking all hard and stuff. And I'm like, "I'm gonna keep my name," and I said, "I'm gonna keep my name." And I did until that 12-inch came out. And the 12-inch that came out wasn't on World One Records. The 12-inch that came out was on Urban Suburban Records, which was Daryl Nicholson and Edward Poe, and they worked together to put my record out. And Daryl Nicholson and Edward Poe, they actually were managing and recording the Eveready crew. I used to be in the Eveready crew. And so I was an Eveready queen. We had Eveready Dials, Eveready CIA. Flyboy Roy was the lead of the Eveready crew. And I was with that crew for a long time. And under that crew, I did more shows across this city for Candy Productions, I even rapped at Henry's nightclub with Henry's, where they strip and all that.
Palace.
Yeah, Henry's Palace. And then
Okay, was that when the dudes was there?
Yes.
Or when the okay.
So let me tell you, and then, like, literally before I was 18, I believe I was 16 years old, I met Moms, and that's what they called her. She was the manager of Watts Club Mozambique, and she loved me so much. Literally, she let me come and get my microphone skills up. This is what she would make me do. I would go to Watts Club Mozambique. I was not 18. She would make me work the booth, take their $5 from them. And then while they doing all that, I'm in the booth with her. And then when the dancers would go on break, she would let me go out and perform for the ladies. And then I would perform my rap songs for the ladies. And then she would have me come back in the booth, or somebody would have to come get me and take me home. And I did that too. So I was everywhere holding the microphone, backyards, bar mitzvahs.
All right. So now you uplift another cultural moment in Detroit that I have to uplift. So, and I'm not that far from it either. On Finkel Ave, there were 2 legendary clubs. These legendary clubs actually were very legendary jazz clubs too. Because I would hear people say like, the Whispers used to be at Mozambique. And my whole understanding coming up was those were strip clubs for men. So they were, yes. So, so Henry's Palace, Watts Mozambique are strip clubs where the exotic dancer are men. And obviously, I assume a lot of black dudes, because a couple guys I know that went to high school were there. Actually, one of my bosses, he was one of the most interesting people too. If you watching this, Charles, Light Luscious, I actually would love to interview.
Oh, I remember him.
Hilarious. I would love to interview him. He was hilarious.
Oh, everybody remember Luscious.
Hilarious. So yeah, if you see this somehow, you're on the list of most interesting people I've ever met in my life.
Hey, Luscious, hey.
So with this, you're performing hip hop in there, and a lot of rappers, even in my hip hop days, like at the women's strip clubs, like hip hop is finding ways to play and be heard in places where you wouldn't expect hip hop to be. Even in the documentary about Arsenio Hall, like people have this idea that Arsenio loved hip hop. Arsenio never really loved hip hop like that. It was just that all of the other acts at the time weren't willing to try coming on this show.
Yeah.
Whereas the hip hop acts were like, we need a show to come on. So that's what built the marriage between both. And it's not just, it's like you say, rappers, drop of a dime, you got to be ready to perform wherever.
Wherever. And I will say, recording studio guys like Corey Blake, and I remember doing some recording with Ready for the World, trying to get that demo together. And I will say that there were some promoters also in the area. So when we did perform, like at Henry's, Watts, and things like that, when it was curated specifically for hip hop, it would be like a showcase. And so they would put a show together. It wouldn't even be on a night that they normally had dancing. And we would go there and we would perform. And sometimes it would be during the day, and then our family and friends and community would come out and support us that way. And those were showcases. And so we didn't have to mix and mingle per se with the dancers and stuff like that, but we would on certain times. Like I know when I was with Moms, I definitely was the only person in the room that was a rapper and would rap and do all those things. And before I signed with World One, I had already opened up for MC Light, Boogie Down Productions, with that 12-inch I had. It did a lot. It got me busy. I did stuff with Eric B. and Rakim. I opened up for MC Light. I was so, did you see P. Dot opened up for MC Light?
Mm-hmm.
When I saw that, it was a full circle moment, because I really feel like P. Dot, if I had a baby daddy, and if I had a physical baby, she probably would be my baby.
Hilarious.
For real. I love her. She is so much like me in terms of her, like, rah.
P. Dot, MC right now. So when people say like women can't rap, women can rap. It's just what women are you listening to?
That's
you know what I'm saying? So P. Dot is skilled in lyricism, a lot of times people know lyrics but can't make songs. She can make songs and just creatively an amazing performer. P Dot is amazing. I remember at the 50th when I got the picture of both you guys, you was like, "You gotta send me that, Khary." I was like, "I got you."
Yes, because that was my
Yes.
first time meeting her.
Wow, for real?
For real, and people have been calling me about her maybe prior to that, maybe 2 years prior. Like,
Mhm.
"Have you heard her?" And they've been sending me links and stuff, so I had been watching her, so I was a fan. So by the time we ran into each other at the 50th event, we was just having basic conversation about the food, and then we realized who we were to each other,
Mm.
and I had made a vow and a promise to her that I would always hold space for her, in any way that she needed.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's still a tough industry for Black women, and it's a tough industry for women rappers in general. And, our topics are a struggle and up for the gays, and, we're still trying to figure out, the sexual politics behind things, respectability politics. What do we talk about? What do we rap about? And I've always been a lyricist, and so I always find myself attracted to women rappers who were also that.
Mhm.
But that don't mean I mean, we all got a place, right?
Yeah.
And, I'm getting this T-shirt made, right? I just got a text from she used to be my, sidekick and my hype girl when I was rapping, and, she's got this T-shirt company now, and she's making some T-shirts for me,
Mm.
and, you know how you have those T-shirts and they got people's names
Yeah.
on them. So mine is gonna say Pepsi, which is her first. It's gonna say Pepsi, Sunshine Bay, the LaCrucio Girls,
Mm.
Silvery, Smiley, and then on the back it's gonna say the original Nikki D. And
Wow.
and I cannot wait to wear that, like, outside. And a lot of times, there's a lot of Black woman hip hop history in Detroit that got missed. I mean, because everybody keeps thinking, and this is the debate about when did the hip hop era start? Did it start during the hip hop shop era and all of that? But, right down the street was Future Funk Records, and that's where we started in the '80s. And my first album that came out was 1989. So I mean, not album, but 12-inch. It was 1989, and there's always more to find. And as the archivist that I think I am, and I'm really I don't know, I just love history. So I'm just so interested in digging more because there are even more women rappers that are here that are a little bit more even obscure than us.
I think that first off, as an MC, if people don't recognize that I'm a rapper from this, my cadence, my rapper hands, as people say, I'm always talking with hands. It's from microphones. It's like, hey, what you doing? So with that, definitely the journey for uh, women in hip hop is definitely tough. The journey in hip hop itself is tough.
Yeah.
So navigating the safe spaces, what could be safe, and then even just the commitment to where things go. I've done so much work with like Lola Damone, and I always tell Lola, it's like I definitely know everything Lola got on top of things, but it's like some of the creative stuff that I hear where it's like, man, I wish we could get that to the people, but it's always more politics, definitely, that women are dealing with in this space where it's already a lot of politics anyway.
Anyway.
And that's where Detroit has delivered some of the best MCs, men and women.
Yeah.
And your journey in it, though, as we get back in this space of from World One, and I know I'm fast forwarding a little bit,
You
just knowing the
fine, you
story,
fine.
to Wayne State in poetry. So still creative with a pen
Yeah.
and speaking. Share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so when I, signed to World One, it was Mr. Maxey that told me to promise him I would go to college too, and I was like, "Okay, Imma go to college," and I started slow, but then, I went to Wayne State University, and I started hanging out at the Student Center building.
Mhm,
Where all the Black students hung out. And I got to Wayne State maybe a little bit after Errol Henderson led the protest where the
mhm,
students took over the Student Center building.
mm,
That had happened already. So by the time I got there, it was a really strong Black student presence. They had their days and times where they would hang out in the in at the Student Center building, and I started meeting poets. And I knew Jessica Care more from when she did Just Kicking It, But we hadn't seen each other in a long time, and then we ended up being at Wayne State together at the same time. And she would be in the student center building with us, and we would just talk about these things. And I remember she was on her way to go and do Apollo, and I was inspired by that. And not just her, but just in my English literature classes, because that was my first major, but my mama made me change it.
Mhm.
That's a whole nother story, but I'm back to it now. And anywho, I just started picking back up because I wrote poetry as a kid. Started writing it, then started doing it in classes, then start hearing about the sets. Excuse me. Sorry. Start hearing about the sets, and then start going to open mics. I went to Joel's spot,
Cafe Mahogany.
Cafe Mahogany. I went there. I went to the other spot where Jessica used to go at all the time on Michigan Avenue.
Mm,
Pour Me Cafe.
mm,
And I just started going, and I just started writing, and I just started showing up. And then one particular year, I discovered slam poetry.
mm,
So I discovered slam poetry around 2002 when we actually had a Detroit Poetry Slam team.
mhm,
And they went and I believe they won or almost won second place. No, they won, and then the next year they came in second place. Then the next year I decided to slam.
mm.
And when I slammed, I ended up being the Grand Slam champion, and on
Wow.
my team was Blair, myself, Aurora Harris, this dude out of Ohio. I don't even know how he got on the team, but he was still with us.
Hilarious.
His name is skipping me right now, but he was dope though.
Mhm,
I want to say Keith, something about, I think his last name was Keith. I can't remember. But we had Aurora Harris coaching us.
mm.
It was me. It was Blair. It was Christina, Cassie Poe. It was a bunch of us that had made this team that was gonna make up this 5 to compete, and we competed, I believe, in Chicago, and I learned so much, and I got so excited about it. Aurora just encouraged me to become the Detroit Slam Master, so then I became the Slam Master coach after that for 4 years.
So, from performing hip hop
Mhm.
to performing spoken word and slam,
Yeah.
what are the similarities? What were the differences in your approach to it?
That's a good question. I think, had I not been an MC, I wouldn't have been able to do open mics or slams. I think that hip hop prepared me for audience energy. It prepared me for writing in ways that others didn't write. Cause I would write, cause I remember one of the first MCs that worked with me when I was rapping was Valentino. And he always taught me how to rhyme inside of a line. Like, don't just rhyme at the end, get you a rhyme somewhere in the middle, in the beginning, at the end, and tell a story and say the unexpected. That's how I was, this guy in the hood worked with me. So I took that with me to poetry. Like, I always wanted to be able to surprise. And then at the same time, like, when I started poetry, I literally, and I will admit this in front of everybody, I was falling out of love with hip hop
Mm.
because hip hop was doing nothing a lot, was doing too much towards um making us Black women look really bad. Like, and I don't even know if it's gotten much better, but I couldn't do it anymore. I was like, I don't even know how to show up in this space. I'm a lyricist. I want to rap battle. I don't know how to show up over here and talk about these things and use my body, and I didn't have all of that. I wasn't light skinned. I didn't have big ass. I didn't have none of that. But hip hop seemed to always center that. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it felt weird. So I was like, well, I just go over here and do the poetry and wear my hair natural and just, do all of that. And with the transference for me, I believe that being on all those different stages at different times in my life helped me get really comfortable in the poetry world and very comfortable on a stage with a mic. And I would say one thing that was really obvious to me, which I'm learning now, right, is you cannot always in poetry rely on what you can do on stage. Your poem has to live on the page. And to strike that balance is reserved for people like Jamal May. And he came to the Meadery Eatery when I first heard him read poetry, and he named himself Verses. And that's what we called him. We knew he was an MC. And he would get up there and recite his raps. And that was good enough, right? But then he took it to the next level. And now, most recently he was teaching. And he was on our slam team too. But it's like just being able to strike that balance, I think.
Excuse me.
But I think there's a home for each of them. I think that poetry is rap. I think rap is poetry. I think they're both one and the same. Um, but I also think that there's certain things that if you're gonna own both of them, if you're gonna embody both of them, you have to really one first have a heart. You have to have a love for your people, and you have to be willing to say the things that others won't. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the other thing too I was gonna say is that I I have this love-hate relationship with both of them, to be honest. And my love-hate relationship with both of them keeps me in it because I don't know if I would be who I am without either.
Mm, that's deep. As I'm gathering. Hold up. Hold up.
All right, you Imma take a sip too.
Man.
It's the weather changing.
Got that right. My sinuses killing me. Oh man. Such a good question too. Love, hate,
Yeah.
the creativity of it. How do you motivate through it?
Oh, wait. There is something truly, truly spiritual and transformative about finding your voice and about using your voice in a way that challenges your lived experiences and others. It's something about being able to know the power of the spoken word. So, my name is Kalimah. It means spoken word. Um, and it means that you are to profess that Allah is God and that there's only one God that you are to worship. And it also translates into goddess Kali, Ma, who was the protector of children, Indian goddess. And she has this red tongue coming out. She's has this power of the word as well. And then in Kiswahili, it means black mother. And I remember when I decided I was gonna be a rapper. I'm gonna go back to that day. Ooh, that's something, 'cause I haven't talked about it, since the death of Angie Stone, but I was probably about 11 or 12, and, Funk You Right On Up had already been out maybe about a year, and I got my hands to it some kind of way and was able to have it at my house and was listening to it. And my mother used to have a lot of index cards in the house. Remember I told you she used to give me notes and stuff to write with? She didn't do that with my other sisters, but I mean, literally, my mother would say, "Stop watching TV and write me a love letter," and my sisters got smart enough, and we would exchange chores, and I would write the love letters for everybody.
Smart sisters.
We would exchange, and I would write the love letters for everybody, but I took index cards, and I wrote out the exact verse that was my favorite verse. It wasn't Angie's, but it was my favorite verse on "Ring Ding Dong," that song, and I remember practicing on the bus. I remember having these flip cards, and I just kept learning it and learning it, and when I finally got that one verse down, I put my mom in the living room, and I put the song on, and I sang it for her, and I said, "Mom, I wanna be a rapper."
Mm,
And she said, "You are what you say."
wow.
And she said, "If you put it in the universe, it will manifest." And she said, "If you can't say it in this living room in front of me and your sisters, you can't say it outside."
Interesting.
And 'cause she knew I had a mouth, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I was very colorful in my
Colorful.
expression, very colorful in my expressions, and so
That is a creative way of saying fill in the gaps.
yeah, and I never forgot that message, and she never let me forget it.
Mhm.
When Biggie died, she
Mm.
called me and she said, "You can't name your album Ready to Die and think you're not."
Mm. Yeah, I think the premonitions of death throughout the music of, Biggie and Tupac are very eerie,
Yeah.
um, very eerie when we think about speaking things into life, where
Yeah.
you put your energy. So you talk about this balance, because any artist, I think that we're all gonna have love and hate for what we do,
Yes.
but we also are inspired through the creativity.
Mhm. It's
And
a spiritual practice.
in this same creativity, you spoke a little bit about another one of your art forms, natural hair and locks.
That's a great transition. I love it.
And I'm gonna say this because for now, man, this is our coming up. This is either the 5th or the 6th, My Natural Hair show coming up.
Ah, yeah, right.
And
Me and you never connected about that. We need to.
we never connected. And others were like, yo, you need to get Kalimah to be connected in this. I was like, you mean Kalimah, the Nikki D? You mean the spoken word artist? I was like, natural hair too? Break it down.
Okay, thank you. So I've been doing natural hair, braiding and all of that since they said since I came out of the womb.
Mm.
And when I was very young and I didn't have hair customers or nothing like that, I would braid grass. I came out braiding. I would braid grass. I would braid the fringes on the ends of towels. And then my little sister came.
Hmm.
And I was 11 years older than her. And I remember we were all, my mom had the crib in her room, and then we only had 2 bedrooms at the time, and me and my big sister were in the other room. And I remember at night, I would sneak and get in my mom's bed so I could put my arm through the crib and just touch her hair like this because my mother said I couldn't braid it until her soft spot filled in. So I would just do this at night just to fall asleep. But as soon as her soft spot, I was like, "Ma, I can braid around it. I know how to do it." And I started braiding my little sister's hair, and I was really good at it. And I had a neighbor who saw me braiding my doll's hairs one day, and she asked me to do her daughter's hair. D. Michael from the North End was my first hair customer that I made $3 from
Wow.
every week, and I just kept doing it. And then I didn't get interested and I didn't get interested in locks until I got to college,
Hmm.
because that's where people were wearing them. And in the poetry scene, that's when I started discovering, hey, this lock thing is a thing. And I hate to make this a long story, but I'm gonna tell it, okay? So I was at college at Wayne State having a hard time in my stats class.
Mm.
Hard time, because I'm not a math person. Never been, never will be. I can count my money. That's about it. However, the stats class was kicking my butt. They said if we give her a Black woman who's in her PhD program to mentor her through this stats, she can get through it. So the school connected me to this Black woman who was working on her PhD.
Hmm.
And she had what you would call a Detroit hairstyle, but she wasn't from Detroit. She's from New York. But you remember the like waves on one side, the bob on this side, shaved in the back. She had one of them things going on.
Yeah.
And she was really good at mentoring me around math and stuff like that, stats and research. That was cool. Well, she went through a horrible breakup.
Mm.
And she said, "I'm cutting all my hair off and I'm starting locks." I was like, "Really? Who gonna do that? I don't know nobody to do that in Detroit." She's like, "No, I'm gonna go back home and get it done." I said, "Well, who gonna keep it up?" She's like, "You know how to braid. You'll do it." I was like, "Okay." So she went and got these little bitty twists put in her hair all over. She cut the perm out, everything. She came back to Detroit, and she lived in it for weeks, and then she's like, "Okay, it's time to redo it." I was like, "Well, I don't know how to do it." So she said, "I'm gonna call the guy who started mine, Fando Kafele." Kafele is one of the premier locticians in the country, even now.
Mm.
And she called him, and he talked me through it. And I went through her hair like a duck in water. It was so easy, and it came to me, and I enjoyed it. And then I was like, "Okay, I'll keep doing this." And then we found somebody for her to take care of her for real, for real. And then they asked me to come, and I started doing some interning under them for a little while, particularly during Christmas break of the school semester, so I could make a little money. And then I just one day made a sheet. And I said, "Imma name my place Pick Nap, 'cause I pick naps, right?
Mhm.
Or I don't want y'all to think this is like whatever." So I came up with this Pick Nap brand. And I put this sheet of paper, the sheet of paper that used to be at the student center building, you could just rip the number off?
Yeah.
I did that.
Mhm.
And then I just started getting clients. And then I just started getting clients and getting clients. And I took to it. And I went to the Natural World Hair Show in Atlanta. I actually sponsored the Natural Hair Show trip with Etta Fly a couple of years in a row. I just sponsored. I didn't go, but it's just something that I love to do. And so I have a studio, a natural hair care studio in Detroit, in a non-disclosed location, and it's where my clients come. And I cultivate locks once a week, every Friday. I used to do Friday and Saturday. I used to do Monday through Thursday. But, my schedule just won't let me do
Yeah.
it like I used to do it, so I still have clients, but I'm not taking new ones, and The ones that leave, they always have a replacement, like, "Okay, you can't do my hair no more because 'cause I'm about to cut my locks out, but I got a girlfriend," or one of my sorority sisters, or, I reserve that for them, and I enjoy it, and I just slap locks together and snap naps, and it's a community down there, like, on Fridays, the people see my car at the location, they don't have appointments, they just come on in, and at that same location on the 2nd floor is where I have the SASHA Center.
Mm.
So, it's just a community space where we all gather and get together, and I had locks myself twice, and I don't know if I would ever do it again, but I enjoy cultivating locks, and I think
Wow.
that natural hair is who we are.
That's deep.
I did
So
Jessica Care Moore's hair before, Sonia Sanchez, Era D. Matthews, Con Davison, I started his locks when he had them.
wow.
So, so it's really an extension, like you had described earlier, of all these things, like the natural hair just bring it all
Yeah.
together too.
So, still in these same circles.
Yes.
And during this time, also one hell of a spoken word slam artist. Where does Sasha Center and the work there begin to come into the fold?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. We jamming. I appreciate this. Okay,
Mhm.
so, um, I, am a survivor of sexual assault.
Mm,
I was, sexually assaulted as a child, and I was sexually assaulted on a date, and I was sexually assaulted by a so-called boyfriend, all before the age of 20.
mm,
And when I was sexually assaulted as a child, I was sexually assaulted by a family member.
mm,
And that took me through a whole lot of trauma, like a whole lot. Like I would every time I did something successful it was me just trying to pull myself out of darkness, right? And what happened was when I went to college at the same time and my mother told me to change my major to social work, which she knew what she was doing. Um, she really knew what she was doing. I miss her so much, and I'm so glad I'm a social worker by trade. I have a BSW, MSW, Master's in Social Work, and I have my license as a clinical therapist. And what happened was when it was time for us to do our first internships, I asked myself a very difficult question. I said, "If you're gonna do an internship, do it in front of the populations that scare you to death."
mm.
And so my first internship was at an elementary school because kids scared me to death. And they loved me, and I loved them, but I was afraid of them. But what I realized really is I wasn't afraid of the children. I was afraid of my own childhood story.
Yeah.
And so part of our work was we had to go look at our old records. And when I looked at my old records, it started helping me identify exactly why I had to go through the things I went through. I had went to 5 different elementary schools. I had and not because I was getting kicked out, but because we had to keep moving from place to place, dealing with my mom's schizophrenia. And I realized and I got smart, like, by the time I was in the 6th grade, I would do all F work and then turn in all A work at the end, get straight Ds, and they would socially pass me.
Mm,
And I did that at Sherrod, I did that at Dwyer, I did that at Maybe. And then when I got to Cerveny, which was on the west side when we moved over there by the studio,
yeah.
I didn't know them people over there. So I was like, they might not go for that. So I started actually trying to do well. Then I went to Redford, dropped out first semester. Next semester went to Cooley, dropped out. And then my mom made me go to Job Corps in Grand Rapids. And that was the best thing she could have ever did. But I was still struggling, still trying to figure out who I was. That's where I met Mozzy Ski.
I was gonna
Yeah.
mention that from the last interview.
That's where I met Mozzy Ski when I went to Job Corps. So, to bring you back up to the social work piece, my next internship, I decided to work at the Detroit Police Department Rape Counseling Center.
Mm,
Now it's called the Victim Assistance Program because I was afraid that I wouldn't know how to treat a survivor of sexual assault because I
yeah.
was one. And I had Black women there that worked with me, that tutored me, that mentored me, that held me, that taught me, white women too. But it's different when you talk about Black women about the work, right? And the Black women that taught me that worked there, they taught me lessons about how to treat people. But Black women who needed the services taught me much more. And so I was with the Detroit Police Department for 9 years. I left at the 10th year. At the same time, I was trying to become a slam poet and writing, the book about locks and all of that stuff. And, what I had left there with was a bitter taste in my mouth that systems don't treat Black women right, and that Black men, until we engage them in a conversation about the trauma of lynching in this country, we're gonna continue to have these issues. So, I also thought, "Hey, I should just start my own nonprofit." It didn't just come out like that, it was some lived experiences that I had had because, I was asked to serve as a consultant for the Michigan Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, and what they were interested in, because I kept asking the question, is how are these systems showing up for Black people? How are systems showing up for Black men? How are systems showing up for Black women when we're talking about gender-based violence and sexual assault? So the coalition was like, "We need you to come and teach all these other organizations how to show up for Black people." And so I was doing that, but then I was like, y'all don't do it right, so let me try to try to make up my own." And
Yeah.
so one night I was asleep and, about 4:30 in the morning, sounded like wind, "Start your own agency and name it SASHA." Very
Mm,
clear. And I sat up and I said, "What?" And then I wrote it down and then I typed it on a piece of paper, like on a computer. I said, "I guess it could be an acronym," since I was fully in my writing mode of poetry. I was like, "Yeah, that should say Sexual Assault Services for Holistic Healing and Awareness, where we intentionally center the lived experiences of Black women." I
mm,
just typed it like that, in Black communities and Black families. I typed it like that. Called the coalition, told them I had that dream. They called me back and said, "You can't have dreams like that and think we're not gonna help you. Cheryl Rogers is our staff attorney. We're gonna give her you. You can have her for a whole year until your nonprofit is off the ground.
wow.
She's sending you an email, just answer the questions." And it took me 2 years to answer those
Mm,
questions. And when I finally got those questions answered, she called me and said, "Come on up to Okemos, and sign these papers." And I did, and I signed the papers, and we actually became a nonprofit, June 1st, 2010.
mm,
And so we started doing events and programming and things like that. And then we started our support groups as I was becoming a professor at Marygrove College. So I decided I wanted to teach social work in community with community. And that's where we had our first support groups at Marygrove. And then we finally got funded by the Office on Violence Against Women. And then we started doing work, and we had our own office on Cass, right next door to Cass Tech, the new Cass Tech. And then, it just kept rolling out. And as it kept rolling out, one of the things I think, and I just really want to kick it with you about this because I want people to see this, is that in community in Detroit, I ran into Calvin Mann the other day at Otis's event where he was acknowledging Detroiters who had done great work in Detroit. And me and Calvin Mann, we kick it and we have real tough conversations sometimes. And he's been on trainings with us, and I, worked with him when he was doing his t-shirts. Actually, he's cut my hair before. Like, he's my friend, his family. And we were talking, and he said, I said, "You and I need to be a little bit more intentional because in the Black community, right? Because I work with Black women centering their lived experiences, some people in community think that I don't like men or Black men, or I don't trust them, or I don't think that there's some divide there. And then because he's centering Black men, there's this group of folks that automatically assume he don't appreciate or love Black women. And we know that with all the social media we got going on out in the world, that we got to handle that ourselves. We can't expect anybody else to fix that for us. So I went and dug in my poetry community, my social work community, the religious community, trying to get Black men who would be willing to have conversations with other Black men about what it means to be, to show up. Because when Black men call the SASHA Center, they call us for 2 reasons and 2 reasons only. They call us because they love somebody who's been sexually assaulted that they want to help and show up for, or they call us when there's a dude in the community that needs our talking to. And so we've been in that space for a long time, but it's been really kinda touch and go, and I think we need to be a little bit more intentional about it. And, at the same time, I was developing my craft of working with Black men and men in general in the sports world.
mhm.
So I'm still the lead consultant on relationship safety and management for the NBA, and I have a lot of conversations with men, and I create really sacred spaces for men to have conversation. And we have Sasha Center is a place of joy. We really believe in Black boy joy. We believe in joy for all of us as Black people, and we believe in culture. We believe that culture cures and history heals. And I've been doing men programming for a long time, but just not at the level I needed. So I'm just so glad to be in this space right now to share with you those things. And we have this thing at the SASHA Center called Culture Cures, History Heals. And this year we're doing a man focused one. We're so excited. It's called Motown Manhood. And we're going to be asking, curating, and I'm working with Jamon on it. And we're going to be inviting Black men to spend the day with us, and we're gonna take them to the SASHA Center lane that I have. I have an auxiliary office in downtown Detroit that's also housed inside of the largest sexual assault agency here, ran by Kimberly Hurst, called SASHA Lane. We're gonna have them there. Then we're gonna take them to the Charles H. Wright Museum, and then we're gonna end at the Motown Museum because June is Black Music Month.
Mhm.
And we're asking Black men in community to bring a young man, Black man that they know between the ages of 16 to 21 to come with us, to give them an opportunity to ask the hard questions and have the hard discussion. And it's always a running joke at the SASHA Center that when men gather, I tell all the women to be quiet.
Mhm.
And they be like, "What?" I be like, "Girl, this is not our turn right now. We gotta let the men talk. Let them talk. Let them be together. Let them heal together, and let us just support and figure out a way to be and to show up for them so that they can really come to terms with what their manhood really means, and let them define and redefine what that means for them." And I say, "Yeah, our goal is to help a Black man really be who he is and be in community and support Black women and children and everybody else, and not take away his manhood. Let him be let them talk this thing out." And I'm able to do that because I think going back to hip hop, I mean, I would be on a whole run of
Yeah.
shows with, like, 2 Live Crew. Like, I gotta
Yeah.
rap with these cats, or I was gonna bring this up too. My mama didn't like Kid Rock
Mhm.
at all.
I remember you said that story before,
I know I'm all over the place. Now Imma stop and let you
and
interject. I don't know if I answered your question, but the SASHA
nah,
Center
you
in
you
particular.
you did, and I wanna uplift 2 things in reference to hip hop. So, well, not just hip hop, but something else you touched on in that, and thank you so much for sharing that. Um, I was supposed to listen, got my voice back, see? There you go. It's all in divine order.
Yes.
So, Mozzy Ski. Mozzy Ski is one of the founding members of Detroit's Most Wanted. So, when you think of a lot of the characters and personas that even rappers to this day carry and carry out, the Bossellini hats and things like that, there have been a lot of people that say, okay, a lot of the persona of what Black Mafia family took to Atlanta ties directly to what Detroit's Most Wanted was doing in hip hop. It kind of lines up. I'm just speaking like people say, "Oh, you so pro black and you so pro Detroit." I'm just putting the two and two together. So Mozzy Ski is one of those rappers that you connect with, and one of your great friends that you met in Job Corps in Grand Rapids, and come back to Detroit, and one of the people that definitely in hip hop legend.
I hope
Also,
you get to interview him.
I definitely would love to get him in studio too.
Mozzy Ski, this your sis. Listen, you gotta give, Khary some play. When you get to Detroit, come back to Detroit and let the brother have a conversation. You are a living legend.
Legend.
When we met in Job Corps though,
Mhm.
he got on my nerves so bad because he had heard that I could rap,
Yep.
and he just kept on bothering me. He had wanted to have a battle with me so bad.
That is rap culture though.
Yeah, he
When you
wanted
know it's another rapper, you
he wouldn't let me go,
you
and I'm
immediately
so glad he didn't let me go. And one day he caught me, outside.
mhm,
He had me cornered. He had the radio because he used to think he was LL Cool J. Actually, he used
hilarious.
to do all that, but he was a fashion icon. He was always fresh.
Yeah.
And he cornered me, and I was like, "Alright, let's go." And we went, and by the time I got finished, he was crying, but not that he lost, because he did lose. He did lose.
Yeah.
He wasn't crying for that. He was crying because he had found his soulmate in hip hop. And he was like, "Oh my God." Yeah, he used to have this rock about himself. He's just his shoulder would pop
Mhm.
back like this, and he would just like, "Oh," and he would do like this, "Oh." And he just when we got back to Detroit, he just never left me alone. And Imma tell you, I told you though, right? Imma say it right here. When I started getting shows with Eric B. and Rakim and all them cats, I only had 2 truth suits, a blue one and a red one. That was all I had, and I would wear that. And I remember he saw a commercial on Channel 62 that I was about to open up for somebody big, I don't even remember, and he
I think it
called.
was BDP.
Yep, it was Boogie Down Productions, and he called me, he said, "You can't wear them 2 outfits, I'm coming over." And he came over to my house with a trunk full of clothes, his clothes,
Mm,
and I picked out a ash gray Levi suit. I kept that thing for a long time. I finally gave it back to him eventually,
hilarious.
but I kept it for a long time, and
Hilarious.
I wore that, and that got me through. But then also, Mozzy Ski invited me to WGPR, and that's how I met Billy T,
Mm,
and that's how I met MC Lyte, and that's how I met, MC Lyte's road manager, Dean Jackson. That's how I ended up in New York with Dean Jackson.
wow.
That and all of that happened because Mozzy believed in me. But I remember one time, Mozzy called me. His girlfriend was out of town, and I was like, "You gonna get in some trouble. How long she gonna be gone?" He like, "No, I ain't about to get no trouble. I'm about to pick you up. We about to go get some,
Hilarious.
we about to go to Blockbuster and get us some movies." We go to Blockbuster to get some movies. I said, "You stay in the car, I'll be back. Imma go in there. I know what I wanna see." I go in there, I come back. He's in the car crying because Billy T played my 12-inch that night for the first time, and it was
Mm,
playing, and me and Mozzy sat in that car and cried together.
wow.
And he said, "This was before Detroit's Most Wanted. This was
Mm,
before." He was like, "You gon' blow up. You gon' blow up, sis." I was like, "We both gonna blow up." And, my
that's
God,
deep.
that my God. And then when I looked up and every time we was watching the box, I had to watch him. I was so proud.
Hilarious. And Detroit's Most Wanted came on the box a lot.
They did, and I love those guys,
Yeah,
and I love Mozzy. He know I do. So being able to see him last year during the 50th celebration was
was
also
really cool.
it was just it was cathartic. It was just beautiful. I was so happy to be there. I think I cried 15 times. I
Yeah.
didn't perform.
Mm,
I was trying not to even be on that panel at this Charles H. Wright
mhm.
because I just wanted to be
Yeah.
in the space.
Yep.
And I was just too proud, too happy, and too overjoyed. But yeah, so all these pieces just keep on coming together.
Yeah. And, you talk Calvin Mann and, encouraged me. I'm young, organizer, definitely speaking on behalf of fathers' rights often,
Yes.
and definitely in this space of podcasting and content creation. I do think because moments are taken in so concise, Lord knows the hours of podcasts you can, and with AI too, you could probably put together all types of stuff that I've said here and pieced it together where I would hope people would apply some critical thinking. And we've had these discussions. We actually now, and we can kind of close on this. And I know
Okay.
this will be deep.
Dang, you fast.
I know, but
Thank
I
you.
don't know how fast this is gonna be. Because this one was heavy. So within the hip hop project we had that we uplifted, the hip hop project that we had that we uplifted, the stories of Detroit's hip hop history, is featured a artist that did one of the cruelest acts that I could ever think of, to another artist. And I was like, the way that this plays out is very tough. So I'm speaking of th- Super MC murdering his wife, and
We called her Native Child.
the 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 way that that rippled through for so many of us in hip hop, and the sentencing was not that long ago. I want to say even last week. And the way that rippled through the community when it happened, immediately, the response from so many people, me knowing him for so long, meeting Native Child a couple of times, especially knowing that Native Child's work was to to counsel and support women that have suffered from domestic abuse from a partner.
Yep.
Uh, and immediately when this happens, the call from Piper, and then goes back into the framework of it's like, when you talk about like men that know men and in communities like our community, my relationship with soup, as I often said when many people said this, like, so this is my first time like saying this like off a phone or anything. Soup, we always knew was on edge. The edge that exists in a lot of us black people in America, it's there. The car accident brain injury that he had. Um, it, certain people say like, where's his thought process? It's hard to like calculate where, you know what I'm saying, this or that or what the impact is. I can tell you this. The response even from that of like, what and how, I'm like, ah, as you say, that was one of those times. And you were organizing. I went to the balloon release that day. Um, it was not shocking to see that like it was me and like maybe like 5 other guys there, you know, and supportive, looking to stand with the family and reach out to the family. I had one talk with a sister at the time, and I'm like, I want to move with whatever I think is within good faith of where the family stands before I jump to anything. And that was my stance. And that was something that the family did in trusting you. This is real, and the to see this move into a space where, people say like, how do you characterize this? All I can think of is that something so horrific, so tragic to happen to rip apart a family. I can't even necessarily put the thought process into the relationship I had with him
Huh.
because
I'm so
so
glad.
demonic.
Yeah, I'm so glad, that we're being vulnerable in this moment to have that conversation, and I appreciate you bringing it up, right?
Mhm,
I think it's important that in community we talk about certain things, and this was a big deal because 2 worlds, hip hop and poetry, clashed, right?
mhm,
There were people who sided with trying to figure it out, just trying to make it make sense, but you can't.
mm-mm,
It's not gonna ever make sense.
mm-mm,
And ashe to our sister who was very, active in addressing gender-based violence in general, 'cause she had had a lived experience even prior to Soup.
mhm,
And I also wanna say that Soup also had lived experiences prior to his car accident.
mm,
And so, while we're trying to grab for whatever we can to make sense of it, one of the things I know in community that we have to do as a people is we have to begin to, 1, engage with accountability and what that looks like, and who should be held accountable, and why the accountability is so important. We as a people tend to blame a whole lot of external things on what people do, okay? And I'm not saying that the external things don't have an impact, they do. And at the end of the day, we cannot continue in this community in Detroit particularly without holding people accountable. And people are holding things with both hands all the time. Here I am in community trying to do my best, but when I get home, there's something that's keeping me from managing a relationship in a way that's healthy, in a way that makes me rethink things. Like I I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the way that Black men are reared in this country that can imp that could really implicate or make problematic the ways in which they are managing romantic, personal relationships, loving relationships. If a Black man in this country is raised to not cry, to be strong, to be a provider, to be a protector, to deal with racism, to be marginalized, to be talked down to, all of that, and then we expect them to have a decent conversation with somebody they disagree with. And where they've been reared to even think that aggression is the most is what is the jam, right? Or not sharing your feelings or not asking for help or not saying you have an issue. And prior to uh their situation, they both had reached out to me and they didn't say what they wanted.
Mm,
And my follow-up was just and we never picked up.
mm,
And the last time she performed with us was a slam, and he performed too.
mm.
He came and he performed, and it was, like, a few months before it happened.
Yeah,
And you'll never be ready for it, you'll never be prepared for it. You'll never be able to come up with the, "Aha, that was what this was," right?
yeah.
You'll never and we have to be able to hold that.
I would say one of the tough things one of the tough things as you all hear, especially at this time right now, we still recording and they gotta know we recording. But one of the tough things as a man, I can say, is how and where do we characterize the response for this? Because I had a lot of discussions with Piper
Yeah.
in reference to this.
Mhm.
And Piper, y'all know Piper's my sister. Love
Yeah.
Piper. Love Piper for life. Like so much. Love Piper. And I told
I do
Piper
too.
back to this, like, as a man, the stance that I've taken outside of like more like a social setting
Sure.
is I have to see it and then respond. Cause it's been times where I've responded from what has been told, and that's been other dangerous situations put in.
Mhm.
And back to like you say, you can't make sense out of this. I mean, one of my classic, I have a lot of principles I live by. One of them is you can't make sense out of nonsense.
Mm-mm.
And that's just anything in life. If it don't make sense, and the more you try to make it make sense, then it's that arguing with fools.
Khary, there's a lot of myths that exist in the Black community about relationship safety and management.
Hmm.
There's a lot of moments where you try to intervene and then you end up being the one bit.
And yes.
And or you feel like you've been bitten. Here's what I know for a fact is that and I do this work because my male cousin was murdered by his girlfriend and she didn't spend a day in jail.
Mm,
That also was happening as I was doing all this other stuff. And violence does not have a gender.
mm-mm,
And unfortunately, in this country, because the way men are reared, they tend to be the ones that commit it more.
mm-hmm,
And because of other factors, when women finally retaliate or when women are abusive from the onstart, they tend to be more deadly.
mm-hmm,
And so all that mixed in together and not being able to really tease out what's really happening keeps us from being able to make and take a position. And so what I've done is I have this acronym, it's called ARA, A-R-A, accountability, remorse, and action. And that can be interjected at any point to a young girl or a young boy when they're in the classroom and somebody pulls somebody's hair and they say, "Oh, it's just 'cause he like you." No, it's not. We gotta redo that. We gotta rethink that. Talking to young people as soon as they have words about humanity and about respect and about honoring people, acknowledging and recognizing that we all come to these experiences with our own experiences. We have either seen domestic violence or sexual assault. We have experienced it personally, sexual assault, violence or domestic assault, and we have these ideas about what it really means to be a victim. And a lot of times we do what we call victim blaming. It is so easy for us to figure out what that person did to make that person do what they did. And I always push for us to flip that and stop asking, "What did you do?" but to ask the person, "Why are you doing this?"
definitely. I would say, like I say, you have so much more work in this, but to the young brothers that's knocking on the door now that work with me and just that move and that I can share when I can uplift this.
Yeah.
And it's not just in reference to this, it's in reference to most things in life, which this is one of those. Some of this stuff is like, it exists because it's been around. I don't have any control over how you're going to act or what's going to happen with you. But what I do have control over is how I can respond to that.
Yeah.
I have onus over that. That's my own accountability. And the mental exercises that I often go through in like what I call in my build and destroy is it's being constructive enough in thought processes of things of, okay, let me not place so much onus. And this even back to really, I want to say this for artists too, because we can be so passionately connected to like, oh, I need this record deal, or I really need to be in this movie, or this will change my life, or, I'm a chef. And if this person doesn't, it's like, okay, build and destroy. Mentally, put yourself in if this doesn't happen. Where are you at mentally? Mentally, put yourself in you know, if I no longer have this car and I think that my car is the reason why my girlfriend's with me, or, I'm not, I acted like I go to church, but I really don't go to church. Like all of these facades and faces that we put on, build and destroy a lot of this stuff. And then when those mental exercises myself in the building and destroying, I can center myself and calm myself and then like, okay, what does still exist? Even building and destroying this. I mean, the mental exercises, at least like once a month, it's like, okay, if everything from here, no internet, God forbid you don't want my properties to burn down and anything else, and this equipment is amazing, I still have my stories. Where do I pick up and go? How do I connect with that? And some of the through lines, as you say, I can't necessarily look to what or make sense of it, but for the people that I do know that have truly been in the trenches on both sides of that, it's the quote unquote need that I've seen connected to so many things when violence plays out in our community so much. Hence, going through those mental exercises. And it's tough because a lot of external, as you spoke about, really defines who we are internally in communities like ours, because the lens in which we see things from the Black community is already from such a scarce lens. So to internally say like, yo, I'm already where I need to be and I'm better. And all of this other stuff is great. But furthermore, if all of this washes away, I'm going to build up something even better. I mean, your life story and your journey is just such a testament to that. I mean, because it's so many paths like, 2 more years in hip hop, 3 more years in spoken word. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Everything you're doing with SASHA Center, more in the lock journey. I mean, it's so many paths that you can see if you're willing to be creative enough to walk another path. But in that, back to the yin and yang of life. In crises comes opportunity. Right now is one of those times of crises. So the same violence that you speak about that becomes prevalent in a response to so many things in life, I believe it's ever present in American culture because American culture is so violent.
It is.
Like what we take in and what we intake. I recently interviewed a police officer that's looking to recruit. And within that connection, I'm still like so crystal clear about like, so many of these same discussions as you're taking up the SASHA Center. It's been something on my heart to do for a while. And now it's like, okay, I'm going to do it because I'm speaking it into existence. Is I'm past the put the guns down discussion because guns exist. It's more guns in America than people.
It is.
So we need to have the discussion of why would I shoot somebody?
Oh, I love that.
And we need to really start with the range of like I told and the officer said, we probably can't be at that. But I really want to start to like, okay, he steps on my shoe. He steps on my shoe in front of my woman. He steps on my shoe in front of my kid. He steps on my shoe in front of all my friends. Like, when does it escalate? He steps on my shoe and I got alcohol in me. He steps on my shoe and I'm at the club. He steps on my shoe. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
So we can really go through the spectrum. Now, do I think that it's going to change overnight how people think? No, but can it incept in your mind back to the what if scenario of why things happen and how would I respond to this violence? Because everyone that owns a firearm has a reason why they would use it, and the variants of how I would use that firearm can go anywhere. Now, I know I went to firearms, but it's the same thing within the violence of a household, because a lot of these incidents, it is family. And it plays out in so many spaces and places. I mean, you work in the centers, I'm just living in the neighborhood.
It touches us in all the places and spaces, and one of the things I wanna say too before we wrap up here is there's an opportunity for us to engage in what I call Black radical love, and that phrase is not new. It's been used by scholars all across the country. Darnell Moore is one of them. My dissertation chair, Dr. Lisa Zay Winters, taught a whole class about Black radical love. And as a place, and I said this earlier, SASHA Center is a place of joy intentionally because people don't think, one, we deserve that. People don't think we should have that. People think that because we're dealing with such heavy topics, such as violence in the family, that there is no joy. But I argue that there is always joy. There's always love. There's always an opportunity, as you say, rebuild and to redefine and to impact our ways of we get to choose how we think about each other,
Yes.
and we get to choose how we gonna show up for one another,
Yes.
and we can choose love. We can choose humanity. We can choose protection in a way that doesn't control. And one of the things I want to say is that the good news, right? The good news, and we always say this at the Sasha Center. The good news is there's always an opportunity to keep talking about these things. I would love for you to interview our male facilitators. I would love to have you come and become a facilitator.
Oh, man.
I would love that. You already have the things that we know. We know that culture cures. We know that history heals. We know that we can't throw away hip hop. We know we can't throw away the music. We know we can't throw each other away. And that is the initial ingredients that we need from brothers at the Sasha Center. And one of the things I will say is that a lot of the women who come to us, we treat and they come to our groups when they're 16 years of age or older. When they come to us, we are under the understanding and knowing that we're over policed. We just put out a new infograph. Is it graph or gram? Info.
Graphic.
It's a
Mhm.
graphic. We just put out a graphic with information on it
Mhm.
that it's called the lived experience decision tree. And we just put it on our website at sashacenter.org today. And what it is it's a picture that describes and it has a Black woman in the center, and it talks about the needs that she has, safety needs, right? Belonging needs, like the Maslow hierarchy of
Mhm.
needs. And then it's these decisions. Does she tell somebody that something happened? Who does she tell? Why does she tell? How does she get the help that she needs? And what we like to say is it doesn't matter as long as she knows that there's a soft place to land. Brothers also need a soft place to land. And I really believe that Sasha Center still is massaging and figuring out what that
Mm.
looks like. But we need to do it. And we have to do it because our men need us to do it. And we can't do that if we don't really talk about the truth. And the truth is that we're still recovering from our lived experiences here from a long time ago. Dr. Joy DeGruy talks about it in post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Very much so.
And what I really like about her work was that she literally did her research talking to Black men in jail. And she said the biggest issue that they had that would always take them to violence is a idea or thought that they were being disrespected.
And even the layers of that. That's one of the biggest things that me and most of my homies, even at a younger age, and I'm not saying I don't have the chip on my shoulder, definitely got an ego, but that's one of the number one things that I build and destroy oftentimes. Where I say to myself, which this is a tough one. This is a tough one. Because someone may say this is a very egotistical look at it, but it's definitely left me in a lot of peaceful spaces. For me to want respect from you, I got to respect your definition of respect itself.
I like it.
So if you're coming in with an energy, it's that classic, hey, who this in the room? I'm not even looking up.
Yeah.
Because my thought process is like, I know they ain't talking to me.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Because that's not how you engage. You'd almost have to stop me, stand in front of me, say that again, and say, I'm talking to you.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, I can respond to you, but all of that other language, that ain't me. I don't identify with that. So clearly you're, I'm not one of those people like you're operating at a lower vibration. I'm not in that, but I understand it's in the same space. But it's like I have to respect your level of what respect is. I have to respect your level of honor. I have to respect your level of understanding for me to even have that intimacy where it's like that's something that I want to value. And I don't have the demeanor to try to have fear move that into you. I'm not even one of those types of people. It's similar to like most times when I hire people, I tell people, it's like you fire yourself. It's like, do you really think that you delivered on the job that you think you could do? I'm not a person like, well, no, man, I paid you this and you go da 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 and da 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 da. I don't have that type of energy in me, man.
Right.
I got other stuff being a black man in America that can heighten my blood pressure. Last thing I need is to be having some back and forth with you.
I know that's
It ain't
right.
worth it.
Eh,
But that's a Khary way and approach to that.
well, and I think that's the approach that works for us we need to engage in, and I will say that from hip hop to the
Mhm.
SASHA Center to Picknap to all of these things, what I've done is kinda similar to you, is that just finding the light in everyone and asking them to see the light in me. And I'm not perfect, and we're not meant to be perfect, but there are always opportunities for us to get it right. And there are always these opportunities. And yeah, there's a lot of hurt and pain of people, of the people that we know and love. Like there's this text I'd like to refer everybody to. It's called Love with Accountability. And it's really about communities of color, and in particular Black folk, how they continue to love when others have not been able to show up in the way that they need to show up. And it
Yeah.
and it's a real thing. You are going to end up loving or having loved someone who has no love.
Mhm.
And because of that, that really helps, I think, build your character.
It does. And shout out to another Detroit MC. That's Big Shine on the song. You gotta know your boundaries too.
Mhm.
You gotta know your boundaries. And that doesn't mean cut everybody off, but you gotta know okay, this Saturday, I'm not trying to hear what them been doing because I don't have the bandwidth for that right now.
Ugh,
But, I mean, sometimes as the other thing that I'm doing is a lot of people are really, I think, crashing out over the reelection of Donald Trump, and I'm leaning more into community organizing.
absolutely. That's
And
what we're gonna have to do.
but even when you lean into community organizing, you welcome it in. Like I make fun of, I got myself. I'm telling people get a bingo card because when you go to a community meeting, it's about 25 things that you go hear all the time, and you're gonna be thinking to yourself, "Hey, this ain't got nothing to do with what we came here to gather for." But make a game out of it. Have fun. You got to embrace it. We got to know that this is the rhythm of our people and the love of it.
Kari, I want to share a little bit of good news with you, and thank
What
you
up,
so
though?
much. So, what up, though, is I am currently working on my PhD in English literature with a focus on literary and cultural and media studies and writing.
Okay.
And I just got permission
Mhm.
to focus solely on Detroit poetry.
Okay.
And so I am going to be bringing from my lived experience a lens that I am redefining in the literary world to help us see the urgency of which Black women poets in Detroit have written to answer the absence in the archive, to bring attention to the dominant narratives that marginalize Black people, not just Black women, but all of us. And then also how they use their poetic strategies
Mhm.
to incite spontaneity and heat and energy. And so, what I believe, right, if with this lens that I'm bringing, that if we look at a piece that was written by Tawana Honeycomb Petty,
Mhm.
or if we look at a piece by Deidre D. Essence, or if we look at a piece by T. Miller, or if we look at a piece by Vivi Francis or Francis J. Harris, or Magic.
Naomi Long,
Yeah, I was about to say Magic.
Nandi Comer.
Nandi Comer, all of them. If we look at their work, there is something to be said about geographies. There's something to be said about Black girlhood. There's something to be said about the urgency of which our stories need to be told. It's almost like listening to a jazz song, and you know it's been crafted, but then there's these moments of improvisation. And I argue that these poets intentionally write in that way to create these environments for us to really see it deeply, deeply, and criticize it even more. And I'm just so excited about delving into all of their work, Jessica, everybody. But then I'm also super excited about developing, hopefully, a new theoretical model for us to be able to not just read their work in that way, but everybody else's work. And I'm excited about centering the geographies of Detroit. So the question is not just what makes a poem, but what makes a poem a Detroit poem.
Oh, man. I love it. I love it.
You do?
I'll say this, too. I'm going to love to see a bingo card you made because it's going to be definitely some interesting conversations that go on along that journey. I think I got about 4 of them bingo things on it in my head right now.
See,
promise,
promise we'll come back and have another conversation.
Oh, all day, all day. So now the classic Detroit is different. Very first car, year, make, and model, year you got it.
Oh my God. My very first car I bought myself.
It could be whatever iteration you answer this.
It was a blue Turismo. It was my mama's, but she gave it to me.
I don't even know what a Turismo is.
And it was probably a 1982.
Okay. Where's the first place you went with it?
Bella.
That's so classic. That's so classic.
Bella.
Okay. All right. So classic. I love it. You're the DJ at the end of the fireworks. Woodward and Jefferson. You get to play 2 songs. What songs you playing?
Oh my God. As by Stevie Wonder.
Okay.
And Aretha Franklin, Respect.
Okay. All right. There we go. And we close with this. You could rename Woodward after one Detroiter. Who would it be and why?
I could rename Woodward after a Detroiter. Who would it be and why? I would rename Woodward Robert Hayden.
Why?
Robert Hayden is one of the dopest poets from Detroit, raised in Paradise Valley. He has a whole lot to say about Black people and refused to let them put him in a black box.
I love it. I love it. With that being said, Kalimah, Dr. Kalimah, loved having you here, and you definitely coming back. Detroit is different.
Detroit is different. I appreciate you.
Peace.
Detroit is different. Yeah, Charlie Marlin. Detroit is different. Yeah.